The suffering of the victims of genocide is in fact incomparable. However, it is compatible. In this case, genocide comparative should not be prejudiced. And although we cannot weigh the sufferings of the victims of genocide, we can use the parallel stories of the victims to learn from each other.
Thank you, Carol, for giving the Documentation Center of Cambodia an opportunity to show the world of our work on genocide education in Cambodia. Like other countries in the world, Cambodia aims to stop genocide in the future by working with both national and international organizations and Cambodian government to improve knowledge of the study of the students and a young generation about the awareness of genocide in Cambodia. So here in this program, 3 colleagues from DCCAM are in charge of this 1-hour session. So my name is Heng Pong Rasi, currently is the Director of Genocide Education in Cambodia of the Documentation Center of Cambodia. So I will present a very brief of genocide education in Cambodia and its result in the schedule. And a young female wearing the eyeglasses is Sovijet Mehta. So she translated the book entitled Question Asked About Holocaust by Henry Price. She will present a brief of the DCCAM and its work. She will also discuss the last scene of the Breaking the Silence, which will be played through the schedule in this program. So the male, Mr. Sombichan. So he's a teacher, a history teacher who has more than 10 years experience of teaching history. He is also a national trainer from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport. Richard will discuss the first scene of the Breaking the Silence, which is planning to play after my introduction of the play in the schedule. Next, I would like to give the floor to Sovijet Mehta to present our centers and its work to preserve justice and memory in Cambodia. Please go ahead.
So thank you, Rasi, for the introduction and greetings from Cambodia. I am Mehta. It is my honor to be a part of this year's initiative to conclude Genocide Awareness Month and unite to fight against hate worldwide. So before we get into our discussions, I would like to introduce to you briefly about the Documentation Center of Cambodia, also known as DCCAM, and our missions. DCCAM was originally established under Yale University in 1995 after the US Congress passed the Cambodian Genocide Justice Act in 1994. We became an independent Cambodian research institute in 1997. DCCAM is a non-profit, non-governmental, apolitical Cambodian research institute dedicated to documenting the history of the Khmer Rouge, or the history of the democratic Cambodia of Pol Pot, which lasted from 1975 until 1979. And we disseminate information on the Khmer Rouge regime based on our impartial inquiry into facts and history. DCCAM has 2 main objectives: memory and justice. In our objective of memory, we record and preserve the history of the democratic Cambodia regime for future generations. And via this objective, DCCAM is also promoting genocide education in Cambodia. Memory and genocide education are 2 important components to ensure peace, stability, and to prevent the reoccurrence of another form of atrocity in Cambodia. Only by giving education about the Khmer Rouge history to the next generation will the memory of the atrocities stay alive and continue to carry on by the next generations to come. DCCAM is also collaborating closely with the Cambodian Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport to incorporate the history of the Khmer Rouge regime into school curriculum, and is also training Cambodian educators nationwide. Our second objective, justice, is to assemble historical documents and related materials that serve as potential evidentiary information in support of those who seek accountability for the crimes of the Khmer Rouge. Being the world's largest repository of original Khmer Rouge documents, DCCAM has taken a lead role in supplying the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia with 500,000 copies of evidentiary documents and testimonial accounts of survivors of the Khmer Rouge era. DCCAM also provides digital access to its archives to officials, scholars, and the general public in an impartial manner. DCCAM is guided in all of our efforts by the principles that inhere in the concepts of memory and justice. We believe that they serve as the foundation for establishing the rule of law and achieving a genuine national reconciliation. So this is it for the introduction. Now I would like to yield back the floor to Rasi to discuss about the research and genocide education in Cambodia. Rasi, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Meta, for your presentation. So presenting a genocide education in Cambodia at this time remind me a question raised by a Filipino graduate student who asked me during my presentation on the topic of genocide education in Cambodia when I was a graduate student at the La Salle University of the Philippines in 2012. The question was, do you teach students how to commit a genocide? Hearing these questions, I was surprised. And I spent almost 2 hours to explain the whole class about how to implement the genocide education in Cambodia. Genocide education in Cambodia is a teaching of a history of the democratic Cambodia, which is focused on a period between 1975 to 1979. Genocide education is the only effective way to prevent future genocide and other human rights violations, fostering reconciliation among the victim and perpetrator, and continue to address the question of justice in countries that have experienced the genocides. Cambodians cannot talk about justice and reconciliation when the suffering of the victim have not been acknowledged. In order to fight against the possibility of future genocide and other crime against humanity, younger generations of Cambodia has to understand how and why the genocide happened. Genocide education also have to preserve the memory of Khmer Rouge atrocity, promote moral and civic value, democracy, and rule of law. From 2007, the teaching of democratic Cambodia history has turned toward and emphasized on the objectivity of genocide education, in which the teaching emphasized national reconciliation, peace building, and genocide prevention. Later on, the genocide education was reintegrated into public school curriculum after the Cambodian Prime Minister set out a strategy for the government to commit and improve the quality of education in Cambodia. In 2007, DCCAM published a textbook titled A History of Democratic Cambodia, 1975 to 1979. With the assistance of a number of foreign governments and international organizations, over 500,000 copies of textbook has been printed and distributed to all secondary schools throughout the country. The textbook was officially approved by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport as a core reference for teachers and students nationwide. The textbook provides Cambodian students with a comprehensive historical background of the democratic Cambodia history. The student could use as a foundation for their study and research. In 2009, in a collaboration with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport, DCCAM have also developed a teacher guidebook and student workbook to accompany the textbook. With this material and resources, DCCAM has worked with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport to train over 5,000 teachers nationwide on both historical content and teaching methodology. As of the current situation with the genocide education in Cambodia, DCCAM is the only institution that has been endorsed by the government to work with the teacher and the Khmer Rouge survivor, as well as the student nationwide on the democratic Cambodia history. During the spread of COVID-19 in Cambodia, DCCAM genocide education has increased and developed our online curriculum with hundreds of students and teachers from the most remote area in Cambodia. And we still connecting with them and working with them from now to the end of the COVID-19. Hopefully it's coming soon. As a result of this work, DCCAM Genocide Education in Cambodia has conducted 56 teacher training programs around the country, 42 classroom forums with students on the importance of studying democratic Cambodia history, 41 public education forums with students and survivors to build intergenerational dialogues with the aim of healing and memory. 25 installation of permanent Khmer photo exhibition, 27 installation of anti-genocide slogan inside public school compound, and 23 home visit with family of history teacher who were former Khmer survivor. So this is a very brief of what genocide education work in Cambodia. So next, I would like to introduce the play of the Breaking the Silence. As part of genocide education in Cambodia, a role play is more effective way to teach the student. Today, at this time, DCCAM Genocide Education has an honor to play 2 short video clips of art performance along with the discussion of each scene after the play. So the first scene that will be played this time is a story of divided people. And the second scene is a discussion between the younger and older generation about the genocide. So after each play, some Richard will discuss scene 1 and some Richard Meta will discuss scene 2 for you. Because there has been a long silence for decades in Cambodia regarding the Khmer era, and people who have survived from the regime keep alive by fear, pain, and politics. These 2 plays aim to end the silence in the form of legal justice, outreach program, and genocide education in high school in Cambodia. DCCAM Director Youk Chhang said that while each program is valuable for Cambodian healing, there must also be measured with focus on the emotional and psychological components of reconciliation and healing. This is where art can make a significant contribution. The Khmer killed many artists, but not the artistry of the Cambodian people. Artistry is our soul. So this is a play about the Cambodian people, their sufferings, angers, and courage to move on. In these 2 scenes, one actor represents the younger generation who want to know the genocide happened during the past. And the other 4 actresses play both male and female parts. Each character is introduced by a singer, announcing the name, gender, age, and some characteristics related to their position in the scenes. The characteristics show us how their daily life is being affected by the experience of the Khmer regime. So now it is time to watch the play. Please watch the first scene now, and after finishing this, Richard will discuss the scene with you. Thank you.
Lư khnia cho chết Nực mù chật prách ôm ngay Phê lang phí stung
Sro nong ai con Khmer đôi lo lo sài trời chung bao chờ Sro nong ai con Khmer đôi lo ត្រូវភ្ជុំបោកជលត្រូវភ្លៀងត្រូវផ្គររងាសោតសល់ទុកសោកនៅទល់នឹងកាវនេត្រាង
មានរឿងរ៉ាវជាច្រើនដែលបានកើតឡើងពួកយើងត្រូវតែនិយាយនៅរឿងផ្ទាល់ខ្លួនរបស់ពួកយើង
និយាយរឿងរបស់ពួកយើងចង់និយាយគ្មានពេលលហើយចុះរឿងហេតុអ្វីខ្មែរសម្លាប់ខ្មែរពេលនេះត្រូវតែជួយគិតខ្ញុំផង
នេះគឺជារឿងរ៉ាវនៃការបែងចែកប្រជាជនអ្នកគឺសុភីអ្នកមានអាយុ52ឆ្នាំអ្នកគ្រាន់តែចង់ដឹងការពិតតែប៉ុណ្ណោះអ្នកគឺធីតាអ្នកមានអាយុ52ឆ្នាំអ្នកមិនចង់ដឹងមិនចង់លឺអ្វីទាំងអស់ហើយអ្នកជាអក្សរអ្នកមានអាយុ58ឆ្នាំអ្នកព្យាយាមលាក់បាំងការពិតឯងមានតួនាទីជាអ្វីការជំនាន់ប៉ុលពត
ខ្ញុំជាប្រធានយុវជនខ្ញុំអប់រំយុវជនឲ្យចេះស្រឡាញ់ប្រទេសជាតិ
ឯងមានចេះវិជាចាប់មនុស្សដែរអត់
មានពួកយើងមិនធ្វើមិនបានទេសូម្បីតែពុកម៉ែរបស់ខ្ញុំក៏ត្រូវគេយកទៅសម្រាប់ដែរតើយើងអាចធ្វើអីបានទៅ
ឯងជាមនុស្សសំខាន់ដែរអត់
អត់ទេខ្ញុំនិយាយពិតមែនណាបញ្ហាថ្នាក់លើមិនមែនធ្លាក់មកលើខ្ញុំម្នាក់ឯងដល់តនោះទេខ្ញុំធ្វើការនៅថ្នាក់ក្រោមខ្ញុំអត់ចេះអក្សរអញ្ចឹងហើយខ្ញុំស្ថិតក្រោមការគ្រប់គ្រងរបស់គេខ្ញុំធ្វើតាមតែបញ្ជាគេតែប៉ុណ្ណោះ
ឯងមានដឹងពីការសម្លាប់គេដែរអត់
រឿងសម្រាប់នៅភូមិផ្សេងតាកុហករឿងសម្រាប់ហ្នឹងនៅភូមិផ្សេងតាឯងកុហកឯងមិនអាចប្រកែកថាមិនដឹងពីរឿងកាប់សម្លាប់ហ្នឹងទេអ្នកណាក៏គេដឹងពីរឿងសម្លាប់មនុស្សហ្នឹងដែរ
ចង្អេសដំរីស្លាប់យកចង្អេសទៅបាំងវាមិនចិត្តនោះទេ
បាទហើយឈប់និយាយជាមួយគាត់ទៅខ្ញុំមិនចង់និយាយជាមួយមនុស្សភេទហ្នឹងទេកាលហ្នឹងអ្នកណាក៏គេខ្លាចឯងដែរគេថាបើឯងសម្លឹងអ្នកណាម្នាក់តែមួយផ្លែតស្អែកឡើងអ្នកនោះបាត់ខ្លួនមិនខានទេអត់មានផុតតាំងប្រជាជនគាត់ចេះតែថាអញ្ចឹងហើយខ្ញុំចង់ឯងនិយាយការពិតឯងដឹងពីរឿងកាប់សម្លាប់ហ្នឹងហើយឯងក៏ពាក់ព័ន្ធនៅក្នុងរឿងហ្នឹងដែរកុំប្រកែកឲ្យសោះរឿងនេះកើតឡើងគ្រប់ទីកន្លែងម្នាក់ស្ថិតនៅក្នុងស្ថានភាពដូចគ្នាខ្ញុំធ្វើតាមមេដឹកនាំកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំអត់ហ៊ានប្រកែកទេព្រោះខ្ញុំមិនខ្លាចស្លាប់អូឯងចេះខ្លាចស្លាប់ដែរហើយចាំមានឯងខ្លាចមានគិតថាយើងនឹងខ្លាចស្លាប់ដែរទេតើទៅធ្វើអីកើតទៅបើប្រទេសធ្លាក់ចូលក្នុងរបបនឹងទៅហើយនឹងវិបដិសេរីគ្មានជេរស្ដីឯងពីរឿងកាប់សម្លាប់មនុស្សរាប់ម៉ឺននាក់ហ្នឹងទេអត់ទេរឿងនេះអត់មានពាក់ព័ន្ធដល់សតិសម្បញ្ញៈរបស់ខ្ញុំទេពួកយើងបានអង្គការចង់ជាប់ទៅហើយមិនថាជាអង្គើបល័យពុយសាសអីនោះទេតើអ្នកណាទៅដឹងទៅដោយសារតែឯងប្រជាជនត្រូវគេសម្លាប់ណាក្រាក់បានហើយឈប់ឆ្លោះប្រកែកគ្នាទៅបើយើងនៅតែឆ្លោះប្រកែកគ្នាខ្លាំងពេកអញ្ចឹងនោះឈាមហឹង្សាសម្រាប់មនុស្សពីមុនវានឹងវិលត្រឡប់មកក្មេងជំនាន់ក្រោយម្ដងទៀតសូមឈប់និយាយហើយជីករដូវឲ្យជ្រៅកប់រឿងអតីតកាលទាំងអស់នឹងចោលទេឈប់បានទេឈាមស្រក់ច្រើនណាស់ស្ទើរតែខ្លាយទៅជាទន្លេទៅហើយយើងមិនអាចបំភ្លេចឬក៏លើកលែងទោសឲ្យវាបានទេខ្ញុំក៏មិនសប្បាយចិត្តប្រមាណដែរខ្ញុំក៏ជឿចាស់ដែរនៅពេលដែលអង្គការដួលរលំក្រុមប្រជាជនមួយក្រុមនោះគេបានដេញខ្ញុំចូលទៅដល់ក្នុងព្រៃប៉ុន្តែនៅពេលដែលខ្ញុំត្រឡប់មកវិញប្រជាជនមួយក្រុមនោះគេបានគ្រប់គ្រងខ្ញុំហើយគេថែមទាំងបានឲ្យបាយខ្ញុំហូបទៀតផងគេអត់បានសម្លាប់ខ្ញុំទេអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំមានជីវិតរស់មកដល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃគឺដោយសារតែខ្ញុំមានបុណ្យកុសលល្អរបស់ខ្ញុំទើបខ្ញុំមានជីវិតរស់មកដល់ពេលនេះឯងយល់ច្រឡំហើយមិនមែនដោយសារអំពើបុណ្យកុសលទេដែលឯងមានជីវិតរហូតដល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃហ្នឹងនោះគឺដោយសារសាច់ញាតិបងប្អូនជនរងគ្រោះដែលដើរតាមធ្លាប់តែគាត់ឯនោះទេសំទោសខ្ញុំដល់ម៉ោងទៅហូបបាយហើយខ្ញុំទៅហើយ
មានគេចង់និយាយមកឯងនេះគឺលោកព្រាលគាត់មានអាយុ58ឆ្នាំគាត់ស្ទាក់ស្ទើរទាំងយប់ទាំងថ្ងៃគាត់គិតថាត្រូវសងសឹកឬក៏មិនសងសឹកនោះទេ
ឪពុកខ្ញុំនៅណាឯងបានចាប់ខ្លួនគាត់ឯងសម្លាប់គាត់តើសពឪពុកខ្ញុំនៅណាខ្ញុំចង់មិនចោះសពគាត់
រឿងសម្រាប់ហ្នឹងនៅភូមិផ្សេងតាឯងកុហកឯងមានផុសតាំងមកពីណាខ្ញុំបានឃើញឯងសំទោសខ្ញុំត្រូវទៅហើយទេឯងត្រូវតែឆ្លើយឯងសម្រាប់ឪពុកខ្ញុំប៉ុន្តែឯងមិនហ៊ានសារភាពនៅពេលដែលគាត់ចេញពីព្រៃមកវិញខ្ញុំគ្រាន់តែសួរគាត់ថាតើឪពុកខ្ញុំនៅឯណាឪពុកខ្ញុំមានរឿងអីកាលនោះគាត់ខ្លាចខ្ញុំសម្រាប់គាត់ឆ្លើយថាគាត់អត់ស្គាល់ឪពុកខ្ញុំទេគាត់កុហកខ្ញុំមានកំភ្លើងមកដើមគាត់ដឹងថាបើគាត់សារភាពប្រាប់ខ្ញុំពីការពិតខ្ញុំច្បាស់ជាបាញ់សម្រាប់គាត់ជាមិនខានខ្ញុំពិតជាចង់សម្រាប់គាត់ណាប៉ុន្តែមានមិត្តភក្តិខ្ញុំម្នាក់បាននិយាយប្រាប់ខ្ញុំថាមិនឲ្យខ្ញុំនឹងសម្រាប់មនុស្សទេការសម្រាប់មនុស្សវានឹងមានកម្មពៀដល់ខ្លួនវិញជាមិនខានខ្ញុំមិនសម្រាប់គាត់ព្រោះតែខ្ញុំបារម្ភពីរឿងនោះប៉ុន្តែរហូតមកដល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំមិនដឹងថាខ្ញុំកំពុងតែធ្វើអ្វីនោះទេបើកាលនោះខ្ញុំបានវាយធ្វើបាបគាត់ប្រហែលជាគាត់អាចនិយាយប្រាប់ខ្ញុំពីការពិតហើយខ្ញុំក៏ប្រហែលជាអាចបញ្ចុះសពឪពុកខ្ញុំបានប៉ុន្តែសូម្បីតែវាយធ្វើបាបគាត់ក៏ខ្ញុំមិនបានធ្វើផងខ្ញុំដឹងថាពៀរងាប់ដោយការមិនចង់ពៀការចង់ពៀវិរិយនឹងគ្នាគឺគ្មានថ្ងៃបញ្ចប់នោះទេខ្ញុំដឹងថាយើងមិនត្រូវសម្លាប់រាល់វត្ថុសត្វរុក្ខជាតិដែលមានជីវិតនៅលើផែនដីយើងនេះទេសូម្បីតែសត្វមូសដែលខាំយើងក៏ដោយប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំមិនមែនជាព្រះទេហើយរហូតដល់ថ្ងៃខ្ញុំស្លាប់ខ្ញុំនឹងអង្គុយនៅកន្លែងនេះនៅតែមិនដឹងការពិតជារៀងរហូតតើនរណាអាក្រក់អ្នកណាល្អហើយអ្នកដែលអាក្រក់នោះអាក្រក់ដល់កម្រិតណាទៅហើយអ្នកដែលល្អនោះល្អដល់កម្រិតណាទៅតើប្រទេសបែបណាដែលយើងផ្ដល់ឲ្យកូនចៅរបស់យើងនៅជំនាន់ក្រោយ
បងស្លាប់ចោលអូនជីវិតបងសូនទាំងឈឺខ្លោចសាចោលអូនអាយកូនដល់លោកកាអូនពឹងណាពីពេលនេះទៅអូនពឹងណាពីពេលនេះទៅ
And hi, my name is Samichat. I am a history teacher in one high school in Kanda province, Cambodia. And I am also a national trainer of Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport and Documentation Center of Cambodia, DCCAM. Okay, well, after you watch the play, and what do you think and understand about it? Okay, breaking the silence is divided into 8 scenes, as Rashid mentioned about. 2 scenes are selected to show in this forum. I am responsible for discussing the first play. Okay, now let me discuss briefly about the play to you. The main points of these scenes are about 1, a story about divided people, and 2, characters. Okay, firstly, I would like to tell you a little bit about division people in Khmer Rouge region. Although the Khmer Rouge claimed they were building a nation of equals and tearing down class barriers, they in fact created two classes in Cambodia. They named these one, the base people or old people were those people who had lived in areas controlled by the Communist Party of Cambodia prior to April 17, 1975. Most of them were Khmer Rouge cadres and had full right. And two, the new people or the 17 April people were those who have just evacuated from the cities and towns in April 1975. They were considered as the losers and the prisoners of the war by Ông Can. They didn't also have rights at all, and they were viewed with hatred and suspicion. Okay, secondly, please have a look to the stories of this play related to divided people. There are four main characters in the performance representing two kinds of people. The first kind of people is a group of Khmer Rouge cadres who has got only one performer. His name is Akra. He is 58 years old. And the second kind of people have three characters as the Khmer Rouge victims. Although the three Khmer Rouge victims were the same age, their thinking and feeling were differently. So one of the three victims, 52 years of age, felt that he would have released unless that cadre accepted his past bad commitment or spoke out about what he had done in Khmer Rouge region. And another victim, 52 years of age, thought differently of the first victim. It means that I would like to be alone saying nothing. She didn't want to remind the past stories because she thought when she reminded these stories, it could cause the genocide happen again in her country. At the same time, the third victim, 58 years old man, whose father was killed by that cadre, felt painful since his father was dead. He wanted that cadre to take responsibility to his father's death, but what he wanted is not successful, even burying his father. So I think that's all for my discussion, and I would like to say thank to everyone who pay much attention to listen to my presentation, and I hope you will understand and love this play. So now, please enjoy another play. Thank you.
Pù mình mấy ban chỉ pù mình ở xiêm chốt này dây ní mình men chia được bao lại bước xa được bao anh tay mà nghe anh nuôi tê nhóm mình chốt này dây tê pù mình cứ chia pù mà đài bọc nhóm đôi chân này nhóm có chụp này môi này ông pơ lại bước xa đây hạt nhóm tơi thật đằng ta miền rừng ấy khác cả lang pù mình prap trong mau ta miền rừng ấy khác cả lang ta mà được clear sắp tay mình về vòn men tê ai mà đằng tê bro ai nhé mình ban cắt trong pê để buộc dân ta có clear chơi chặt đâu tê ba viết chỉ cắt bớt con tay dưa luôn nơi không bật tê từ môi không ai đây clear dựng độ đằng hàm cho đây clear chân phát tắc đây clear hai nhóm group pù mình đừng riêng ra bia tay từ ca để bọc pù mình tay nhóm mình trong thẹn châu từ không ca trong trăm đỏ rồi bọc pù mình tê pù mình ông pơ lại cúi xa cứ chia tạ nhà nó bao dương
ទឹកអណ្ដូងទឹកអណ្ដូងនៅតែថ្លាសូមអ្នកមេត្តាកុំព្យាយាមធ្វើវាឲ្យល្អកុំចោលសម្រាមកុំពុរីក្នុងទឹកដក់កុំហងកុំចុងឲ្យទឹកនោះប្រែជាល្អអីកុំហងកុំចុងឲ្យទឹកនោះប្រែជាល្អអី
ពូមិញខ្ញុំមានរឿងរ៉ាវចង់និយាយប្រាប់ពូមិញបែរជារឿងពិតគឺជារឿងរ៉ាវរបស់ខ្ញុំសូមពូមិញនិងអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នារងចាំស្ដាប់ក្នុងនាមខ្ញុំជាក្មេងម្នាក់យើងតែងតែមានញាតិជិតខាងថ្មីអ្នកទាំងនោះមានកូនប្រុសម្នាក់មានអាយុសមានឹងខ្ញុំដែរខ្ញុំគិតថាអស្ចារ្យណាស់គឺជាមិត្តថ្មីរបស់ខ្ញុំចង់លេងជាមួយមិត្តម្នាក់នោះប៉ុន្តែពុករបស់ខ្ញុំបានចាប់គៀបគោខ្ញុំជាប់ហើយស្រែកដាក់ខ្ញុំនៅពេលសម្ដីដែលខ្ញុំមិនធ្លាប់បានឮតទៅសោះពីមុនមកថាឯងមិនត្រូវលេងជាមួយកូនប្រុសរបស់គ្រួសារនោះទេកុំថាឡើយនិយាយសូមបីតែមើលក៏មិនបានដែរខ្ញុំសួរថាហេតុអីពុកឆ្លើយថាឪពុករបស់ក្មេងនោះគឺជាឃាតករម្នាក់ពុកបន្តទៀតថាឪពុកដូចជាកូនដូចជាឪពុកឈាមអាក្រក់គឺនៅតែអាក្រក់ជារឿងរហូតស្ដាប់ទៅគួរឲ្យរន្ធត់ណាស់ប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំនៅក្មេងពេកខ្ញុំមិនយល់ហើយក៏មិនហ៊ានសួរពីរឿងនេះដែរប៉ុន្តែឥឡូវនេះខ្ញុំធំអីពុកក៏បានស្លាប់ទៅបាត់ហើយនេះក៏ជាមូលហេតុដែលខ្ញុំមកជួបពូមិញដើម្បីចង់បានចម្លើយពីពូមិញពូមិញប្រាប់ខ្ញុំមកតាមមានរឿងអីខ្លះកើតឡើងពូប្រាប់ខ្ញុំមកហេតុអីបានជាពូមិញមិនទុកចិត្តគ្នាពូមិញប្រាប់ខ្ញុំមកហេតុអីបានជាពូស្អប់គ្នាពូមិញប្រាប់ខ្ញុំមកតើមានរឿងអីខ្លះកើតឡើងតើពូមិញបានធ្វើអីបានជាគេដាក់ទោសយ៉ាងធ្ងន់ធ្ងរបែបនេះប្រហែលមកពីកម្មរបស់យើងកម្មតើជាកម្មរបស់អ្នកណាជាកម្មអាក្រក់របស់យើងជាវាសនារបស់ប្រទេសជាតិហើយពួកយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាសំនឹងទទួលយកកម្មអស់ទាំងនោះពួកយើងតើពួកយើងជាណាមិញពួកយើងគឺជាប្រជាជនកម្ពុជានឹងហើយអញ្ចឹងមិញចង់មានន័យថាប្រជាជនកម្ពុជារាប់លានអ្នកសុទ្ធតែមានវាសនាអាក្រក់ដូចគ្នាមែនទេពួកគេទាំងអស់គ្នាខ្ញុំមិនជឿទេគ្មានផ្លូវទេអញ្ចឹងឯងនិយាយមកតើឯងចង់បានអីបើប្រទេសជាតិទទួលយករបបនេះទៅហើយនោះហើយរបបបល្ល័យពូសាសវាគ្រាន់តែជាគ្រោះមហន្តរាយតែមួយប៉ុណ្ណោះចូលយើងជីករណ្ដៅហើយកប់អតីតកាលនេះចោលទៅអញ្ចឹងមានន័យថារឿងរ៉ាវនេះគឺជាអភូតហេតុធម្មជាតិដូច្នេះមានន័យថារឿងរ៉ាវនឹងអាចកើតឡើងម្ដងទៀតនៅថ្ងៃណាមួយគ្មានផ្លូវទេត្រូវវានិយាយត្រូវគ្មានអ្វីកើតឡើងដោយឯងនោះទេរបបបល្ល័យពូជសាសន៍គឺជាការបង្កើតឡើងដោយមនុស្សរបបប៉ុលពតគឺជាការបង្កើតឡើងដោយមនុស្សវាគឺជាសង្គ្រាមនិងភាពក្រីក្រវាបានធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាជនមានសេចក្តីសង្ឃឹមថានឹងមានអនាគតដ៏រុងរឿងមួយប៉ុន្តែខ្មែរក្រហមបានធ្វើឲ្យមនុស្សកាចសាហាវនិងប្រព្រឹត្តតែអំពើឧក្រិដ្ឋដូច្នេះយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាត្រូវតែសិក្សាអំពីចំណុចនេះត្រូវហើយការសិក្សាអប់រំនេះក៏ជាដំណោះស្រាយផងដែរតែជនដៃដល់ទាំងនោះបានតែសិក្សាដល់សាកលវិទ្យាល័យប្រទេសបារាំងដើម្បីអីមិញខ្ញុំចង់មានន័យថាយើងត្រូវតែមានការសិក្សាអប់រំដល់ក្មេងៗជំនាន់ក្រោយនៅតាមសាលារៀនហើយការសិក្សាអប់រំអស់ទាំងនោះក៏ដូចជាការអប់រំដល់មនុស្សទាំងឡាយឲ្យបោះបង់នៅអំពើអាក្រក់ហើយនឹងចាប់យកនៅអំពើល្អនេះជាអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំចង់ប្រាប់អំពីការអប់រំយើងត្រូវតែរៀនសូត្រពីប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្ររង្វល់ជុំនេះអាចនឹងត្រូវបែកបាក់ណាដូច្នេះយើងត្រូវតែមានតុលាការតើតុលាការបាននាំមកនៅអីខ្លះវាបានចំណាយពេលវេលាយ៉ាងច្រើនឆ្នាំនឹងលុយច្រើនណាស់ហើយវាមានភាពមិនចុះសម្រុងគ្នានៅក្នុងប្រព័ន្ធតុលាការនេះពីបញ្ហាផ្លូវច្បាប់ជាការល្អប្រសើរតាដែលមានភាពមិនចុះសម្រុងគ្នានៅក្នុងផ្លូវតុលាការវាប្រសើរជាងការឆ្លើយប្រកែកគ្នានៅតាមភូមិជាការល្អហើយដែលវាបានកើតឡើង
បើទោះជាលទ្ធផលយ៉ាងណាក៏ដោយក៏យ៉ាងហោចណាស់ក៏អ្វីត្រូវបានលាតត្រដាងដែរ
ពូមីងអញ្ចឹងពូមីងជឿទៀតថាពូមីងនឹងត្រូវប្រងទៀតទោះបើសិនបើពូមីងធ្វើអំពើអាក្រក់
ត្រូវហើយពួកយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាជឿថាអញ្ចឹង
ប៉ុន្តែខ្មែរក្រហមបានធ្វើរឿងដ៏គួរឲ្យភ័យខ្លាចពួកគេប្រហែលជាមិនត្រូវបានទទួលទោសទេពួកគេនឹងត្រូវស្លាប់នឹងគុកយ៉ាងស្ងៀមស្ងាត់ពួកខ្ញុំក៏ស្អប់តែទាំងនោះណាគាត់និយាយថាពួកខ្មែរក្រហមត្រូវតែសម្លាប់
ទេគ្មានផ្លូវទេហើយការកាត់ទោសប្រហារជីវិតក៏មិនមានដែរប៉ុន្តែយើងក៏មិនគួរធ្វើខ្លួនឲ្យទៅជាអក្រិតជននោះឡើយ
ពួកខ្ញុំគាត់ថាគាត់ស្អប់តែទាំងនោះណាពួកគេជាមនុស្សអាក្រក់ពួកគេមិនត្រូវបានលើកលែងទោសទេ
បើយើងដឹងថាមនុស្សអាក្រក់មិនអាចលើកលែងទោសឲ្យបានយើងមិនគួរផ្ដល់អំណាចនឹងអ្វីគ្រប់យ៉ាងឲ្យអ្នកទាំងនោះទេ
ពួកខ្ញុំក៏ស្អប់តែទាំងនោះណា
តែពួកគាត់បានជាប់គាំងទៅក្នុងគុកនៃការចងចាំដែលឈឺចាប់បំផុត
ឈប់ភាពស្អប់ពើមត្រូវការព្យាបាលវាគឺជាមេរោគដ៏កាចសាហាវវាគ្រោះថ្នាក់ខ្លាំងណាស់វាអាចស្លាប់បានប្រសិនបើយើងមិនដាច់បណ្ដោយឲ្យវាកើតឡើងត្រូវហើយខ្ញុំគិតថាមេដឹកនាំខ្មែរក្រហមក៏គេចាក់សោគេជាប់ក្នុងគុកនៃការចងចាំរបស់ពួកគេព្រោះអីពួកគេបានធ្វើឲ្យមានការចងចាំដ៏រន្ធត់មួយអញ្ចឹងហើយពួកគេត្រូវតែស្លាប់ក្នុងការចងចាំដ៏រន្ធត់នោះ
អូភាពស្អប់ខ្ពើមអើយនឹងការសោកសឹក
ប៉ុន្តែបើយើងមិនស្អប់ទេយ៉ាងហើយណាក៏យើងមានកំហឹងដែរ
ត្រូវហើយកំហឹងវាជារឿងធម្មតាកំហឹងវាជាសញ្ញាមួយប្រាប់ឲ្យយើងដឹងថាយើងរស់រានមានជីវិតយល់ដឹងពីកំហឹងគឺធ្វើឲ្យយើងធ្វើអ្វីមួយដើម្បីផ្លាស់ប្ដូរនៅអ្វីដែលយើងខឹងដូច្នេះកំហឹងវាបានជំរុញឲ្យយើងឆ្ពោះទៅរកអនាគតមួយដ៏ត្រចះត្រចង់កំហឹងនិងការអភ័យទោសអាចរស់នៅក្នុងបេះដូងតែមួយជាមួយគ្នាបាន
អូភាពស្អប់ខ្ពើមអើយនឹងការសងសឹកមិនដែលបានអ្វីស្អប់ខ្ពើមនឹងអ្នកដទៃមានន័យដូចស្អប់ខ្លួនឯងបើសិនយើងរស់ទាំងចំបែងស្អប់ខ្ពើមតែគ្នាឯងលោកនេះនឹងคล้ายជាផ្សែងភពខ្មៅងងឹតលោកនេះនឹងคล้ายជាផ្សែងភពខ្មៅងងឹត
ខ្ញុំអរគុណពូមីងឥឡូវខ្ញុំមានអារម្មណ៍ធូរស្រាលហើយខ្ញុំសប្បាយចិត្តណាស់ដែលខ្ញុំបានមកជួបពូមីងហើយពូមីងបានឆ្លើយនឹងសំណួររបស់ខ្ញុំអាចសារភាពនៅចំពោះមុខពូមីងឥឡូវនេះថាខ្ញុំក្បត់ឪពុកខ្ញុំលួចទៅលេងជាមួយនឹងអ្នកជិតខាងរបស់ខ្ញុំពួកយើងមានភាពសប្បាយរីករាយណាស់ហើយទង្វើនោះធ្វើឲ្យពួកយើងសប្បាយចិត្តរហូតមកដល់សពថ្ងៃនេះគេនៅតែជាមិត្តល្អបំផុតរបស់ខ្ញុំប៉ុន្តែពួកខ្ញុំគាត់មិនបានដឹងរឿងនេះទេឥឡូវគាត់ស្លាប់បាត់ហើយពូមីងខ្ញុំអរគុណពូមីងដែលបានជួយខ្ញុំតាមរយៈពាក្យសម្ដីរបស់ពូមីងពីមុនប្រហែលជាខ្ញុំមិនមែនជាកូនប្រុសដ៏ល្អទេប៉ុន្តែឥឡូវនេះខ្ញុំមិនសោកស្ដាយចំពោះអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំបានធ្វើដោយលួចលាក់នោះឡើយឥឡូវខ្ញុំអភ័យទោសឲ្យខ្លួនឯងចំពោះអ្វីដែលខ្ញុំមិនបានប្រាប់ឪពុកខ្ញុំឲ្យបានដឹងគាត់ត្រូវជាប់នៅក្នុងការចងចាំដ៏អាក្រក់របស់គាត់ប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំអាចធ្វើអ្វីបានបើខ្ញុំមិនអាចព្យាបាលការឈឺចាប់និងភាពជូរចត់របស់គាត់បានផងនឹងព្រោះគាត់មិនអាចចែករំលែកបទពិសោធន៍របស់គាត់ជាមួយនឹងខ្ញុំគាត់ត្រូវជាប់គាំងនឹងការឈឺចាប់របស់គាត់និងរឿងអតីតកាលរបស់គាត់ ប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំត្រូវតែកែប្រែជីវិតរបស់ខ្ញុំ
នេះគឺជារឿងទំលាយភាពស្ងៀមស្ងាត់
Okay, Mita, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. So in these final scenes of the Breaking the Silence performance, it shows a young man stands up from the audience. He wants to make an end to all of these stories of doubt, shame, guilt, and fear. He wants answers. Why did it happen? And how he should deal with it as the new generation of Cambodia. The young man tells how when he was a kid, his fathers forbid him to play, talk, or even look at his neighbor friend. Since he was the son of a murderer, he has never really understood what that meant. And in an intense dialogue about the role of karma and the disappointing outcome of the tribunal, in the scenes you can see that the women introduce him to their conviction that forgiving is better for the victim's well-being than hating and seeking revenge. So these scenes reflects the reality of the importance of intergenerational dialogue for the young Cambodian to voice their opinion, to ask questions, to express their doubt, and to have a genuine conversation with their parents, grandparents, relatives, and even neighbors who are the victim of the genocide, to be able to empathize and have an accurate understanding of their country's history. It is also highlighting the importance of informal genocide education outside of the classroom in complement to the genocide education inside the classroom. Personally, I believe that as the young generation, we should learn and understand history of genocide with empathy to be able to make sure that we can prevent such crime from happening again. We must understand that genocide is a systematic plan to annihilate an entire population. And it can happen in a time of peace, in a time of war, and anywhere in the world. That is why I also translated and published a Holocaust survivor's memoir titled Questions I Am Asked About the Holocaust from English to Khmer with an aim to bring knowledge to Cambodians about the history that share similarities with ours, to learn from that history, and to understand how such atrocities took place in just few decades apart after the World War to never again. And the suffering of the victims of genocide is in fact incomparable. However, it is compatible. In this case, genocide comparative should not be prejudiced. And although we cannot weigh the sufferings of the victims of genocide, we can use the parallel stories of the victims to learn from each other. So after this, I would like to yield back the floor to Rasi before we close our sessions to introduce a little bit about the reactions and the impacts we get when after we performed the Breaking the Silence performance in several provinces last year. So Rasi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mita. So, as I mentioned earlier, a role play is a kind of it's one of teaching methodology the teacher can apply this with the student in the class. Actually, last 2 years, I went to one district of Youk Chhang province in the east of Cambodia to meet a group of students who perform this Speaking the Silence inside their school compound. They act very well, and after the play, after performance, they express their feeling, and most of them said that after playing, they can remember the story of each characteristic, of each character. And because of this, DCK have interviewed thousands of survivors, which include the victim of the Khmer Rouge and the perpetrator of the Khmer Rouge. And this play is based on the best story of that survivor. And during the last 20 years, when I conduct an interview with a villager in one province that is far about 100 kilometers from the city, from Phnom Penh, they said that they don't want to share the story with their children because they feel ashamed of telling the story, the hard experience to their children. And they are good afraid of their children ask many questions about the regime. But after the 20 years, most of the students receive the education from the school. They learn the history of democratic Cambodia. They ask a lot of questions, how and why. And teachers who receive our training from the last 10 years, they have very well knowledge to train them, to teach them how to remember the history, how to analyze the history, how to build the national reconciliation among them by using a lot of material, a lot of documents that we can provide them. So this is about education. As Meta said, education is about, there's two kinds of education, formal education and informal education. The formal education, we conduct training, we go to the school to teach the student about the history, to provide space for the student to ask questions about the history. But informal education is a form of conducting forum with people in the most remote area of Cambodia. People can share their experience, and the student can learn the experience from the survivor. So this is what we call intergenerational dialogues. So the process of doing these dialogues, we invite both kinds of people. Survivor of the Khmer Rouge come to one place. And we also invite students from the school come to that place and listen to the older generation, the survivors speak about their experience. And the student listen and take note of the experience and ask questions to them. And the teacher also learn from the experience. So this is not only informal education, but also a national reconciliation, healings. The people who speak out their story, their hard experience during the Khmer Rouge to someone that the listener just want to listen to the story. The people who speak feel very good, feel healings, and they feel loved to train, to teach all of their students. This is a good lesson for them. When they get back to their home, they are willing, they want to share their story to their children. So this is a good education from the most remote area. Just talking about the teacher. In Cambodia right now, we have two kinds of teachers. The teacher who was born before the Khmer Rouge, it means they experienced the genocide between 1975 to 1979, and the teacher who was born after the Khmer Rouge. For example, Samvichet is one of the teachers who was born after the Khmer Rouge. And he received the training from the Documentation Center of Cambodia about how to teach neutrally to the students and to let the student to remember the history. But before the training, both teachers, they have their own way of teaching. For example, like the teacher who was born before the Khmer Rouge, they teach the student following their experience. They express their hatred, they express their revenge to the Khmer Rouge sometimes. But the younger teacher, they teach the student following their knowledge, the following their document that they have in hands to teach. Both of them did not have one teaching methodology at that time. But after they received the training from the CKM, from Genocide Education Project, they are very well prepared for this teaching. So at this time, I would like to invite to let Sambicha to speak about his experience during his teaching about the Khmer history to his students. Please go.
Thank you, Rafi. Okay, hello everyone again. As I mentioned and I discussed about the play, I am a history teacher in one school in Kanda province in Cambodia. You know, before I become a teacher or history teacher, I was born in 1980, I mean a year after the Khmer Rouge collapse. And I think it is hard for me to understand about the Khmer Rouge because I was not born in the Khmer Rouge. But from day to day, when I grow up, my parents, my grandparents, my neighbors always told me about what happened in Khmer Rouge region. And this, it contained in my brain. So from day to day, when I went to school and I passed exam at grade 12, and I want to become a teacher. And I like history, you know, I like history because I want to know clear about the Khmer Rouge. So that's why I become a teacher of history or history teacher. This is my my intention, and when I was young, I want to be a history teacher. So when I become a teacher and I teach in my school every day over 20 years, and I share my experience to my students a lot. So in 2009, I was selected, or I was invited to train history teaching in DC camp by MOU with the Ministry of Education. So I become a provincial trainer, and I work with cooperate with DC camp. I train nationwide high school teachers on content of history of democratic Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. And I teach methodology of teaching a history of democratic Cambodia. Okay, and then in 2017 until now, I become a national history trainer for MOIS, for Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, and DC camp. And I also work the same job as a provincial trainer. I went throughout the country. For
okay, Chad, thank you, because the time is limited.
Okay.
So right now, just give the floor to Mita. Just please go for another session.
Okay.
All right, so to close our session, thank you so much for your attention to the Documentation Center of Cambodia session and your participation in this special and important initiative to highlight the genocide awareness and to combat hatred and racism in the world. So please join me and my team to light a candle in solidarity to remember the victims of the genocides in world history, including the genocides of Cambodia, and also to reaffirm our commitment in preventing genocide and in promoting genocide education.
Okay, this is the lighter, candle lighting. So I now light this candle symbolizing the memory of Cambodian genocide during 1975 to 1979. I would be loyal to my family, my people, my country, and all who lost their life during the Khmer regime in Cambodia. I pray for those who lost their life. Please go to the heavens with justice and peace. And I promise to work hard for those who survive the Khmer regime and all the younger generation in Cambodia. Thank you.
So thank you so much and goodbye from all of us. Thank you.